Hey everyone, welcome to Write On, the podcast from Final Draft. This is the show where we talk about all things screenwriting. I'm your host, Phil Galasso. Today we have an interview with Gloria Calderon-Kellett, creator of TV shows including the upcoming With Love and the recent revival of One Day at a Time.
I want to talk to you about the female orgasm.
This feels right.
Yes!
Do me a favor, mommy. You stay out of my love life.
I made you a profile on Tinder.
Says lonely Catholic nurse seeks big, strong man to fill the hole in her life?
You might want to reword that.
Someone opens the door that they shouldn't.
You walked in on Alex.
He walked in on me.
If they leave me, it'll just be you and me.
Dear God, you gotta get them back.
I love being alone. We're strong women who don't need a partner to define us. Anyway, I have a date.
Gloria and I discussed what she looks for when staffing a writer's room, how her personal experiences inform her work, the importance of always developing new material, and more. Check it out. I'm here with Gloria Calderon-Kellett. Gloria, thank you for taking the time to chat with me today.
Thank you, Phil.
This year and change has obviously been very challenging in a lot of ways. How have you managed to kind of keep your creative juices flowing? What have you been up to?
Well, it's interesting talking to a lot of writer friends and seeing how everyone's perspective is a little bit different. For me, it was a feeling of normalcy. Like we had no choice initially because we were shooting episode 6 of the 4th season of One Day at a Time when the shutdown happened. So we still had post-production to do. We still had the remainder of the scripts to write because we didn't know how long this was going to be. We were hoping we were going to get to shoot those. So there are 6 unaired episodes that we did finish room writing together that I, hopefully will live in the Guild or somewhere someday so people can read them. But we were meeting every day on Zoom. So there was a normalcy to that yes, we were not in the same space, but to be able to be with each other and to be joking, even though it was on Zoom, was so affirming. It just felt good to see each other amid all this chaos and unknown. So we were doing that for several months, and then the show premiered. So we were kind of dealing with the premiere of the show and doing it all virtually. And that was a kind of safe haven. So then my new deal at Amazon started and I was starting to develop. And that also felt like, a few hours a day, I can just be in my office brainstorming ideas. It was a nice break, a mental break to be thinking about stories versus, just doom scrolling about everything that was going on. So for me, I was incredibly productive, but it was sort of as a cry for help. Like it was a lovely salve on everything that was going on in my life to have this luxury of being able to create.
And, getting the last episodes out there of One Day at a Time, and, obviously it brought some happiness to people at a time when that was in short supply. That must have been very gratifying.
Oh, it was great. The fans of the show have always been so kind and supportive and loving. And so it was nice to be able to give them something for sure.
Can you just talk a little bit about, obviously One Day at a Time, it's a classic show, Norman Lear, all that. And then, you bring a fresh spin to it. You base it on your own family, correct?
I did, yes. Penelope was me. Yeah.
So, can you just talk a little bit about balancing, drawing your own personal stuff while also, you have a writer's room, you've got stories you're trying to tell, how personal are you, is your vision for it? I know in writer's rooms, a lot of times it's, even though it's, the show itself is drawing from your personal history, obviously other writers are going to have personal connections to it. What's the balance of all that?
Well, it is mixed, I think that for me to make something really personal, I always have to sort of put it through the filter of my brain and how I look at the world. But certainly Mike Royce, who was my partner for One Day at a Time and the co-showrunner, he added a lot of personal things from his life. The kids, he had kids the same ages as Elena and Alex. So we were drawing more from him having teenagers than me having small children. And then, of course, the room, especially our LGBTQ writers, had a lot to say in terms of Elena's coming out, Sid being non-binary. We had a lot of places that they filled in, a lot of personal stories that they all had. So in a way, really, our whole room put very personal things into the show that I think the audience could feel that texture, that this came from a real place, even though we take creative license with everything. I am married. I'm not a single mom. I'm a married lady who's been with somebody for a very long time. but I have 2 kids and I have parents that I'm really close to. Rita's character was based on my mother and my grandmother. So we would take from that and take the funniest stuff from that and then fill it in. And then of course the actors fill in so much. Justina put her own spin on it. Rita put her own spin on it. All of the wonderful actors on the show put spins on their characters. And so it really becomes a collaboration.
And can you talk about building out your writers' room? You mentioned, having LGBTQ voices in there. Obviously, you're representative in there. What are you looking for when you're building out a room beyond just good writers?
Well, it always depends on the show, right? So like for One Day at a Time, we wanted a heavily Latino room because we were doing Latinx storylines and we wanted to make sure that we were, specific because it was a Cuban family, but also it was great to hear from all the other Latinos in the room that were not Cuban that were like, oh my God, my family did that too. Like there's a lot of crossover, which is hard to do because there's, like 19 countries under the umbrella of Latinidad that are in the US. Mm-hmm. So I think that's what people find tricky when they're making Latinx content is that we're not a monolith. We all have a very specific point of view. So how do we do it in a way that invites others in? That says this is specifically Cuban, but if you are, the amount of people that on Twitter and emails that I would get that were, oh, my grandmother's Chinese, but she's just like Rita, or my grandmother is Russian, but she's just like Rita, right? Sure. Like that was really moving to me. Like there was an immigrant story that other people could see themselves through. And that's when you're doing the best kind of stuff. Norman always talks about that, like trying to create content that speaks to our common humanity. So the room was very Latino and the room was also very queer because we knew that we really wanted to get into the Elena storyline and build that out in a honest way. And Mike and I are straight people. So we wanted to make sure that we were listening to, and not just having one queer writer, because I had been the one right in the room and I knew what that felt like, and it's not conducive to change. So we had several. And I think that really did help the show. So we're so grateful to all of our writers. All of the writers in the room contributed so much to the show. It really was a group effort.
And I know, new voices and unheard voices and underrepresented voices and, kind of bringing attention to them is something you're very passionate about. I see you on Twitter all the time and you're very straightforward about, hey, I'm looking for a writer who is X, Y, and Z. Please hit me up. And can you just talk a little bit about, why that's important to you and, and the ways you do it beyond just social media?
Well, I do a lot on social media because I have found, look, every place, yes, social media can be a dumpster fire, but it can also be a place of real joy. And if we use it for good, it can be amazing. Our fan base being the first thing that I loved about it, which is people just celebrating stuff that they liked. That was, hey, this is our little pocket of the world, but we want to celebrate this thing. How beautiful that you can find like-minded people who love what you love. How amazing. And have conversations surrounding pop culture in a way that defines your life and that makes you feel a little bit more seen and a little bit more understood. Really, it's in this mortal coil, finding a way that we can find connection, right? So that was super nice. But also, when I was coming up, the internet wasn't really, Twitter and all of that weren't really a thing. So having direct access to a creator was unheard of. And now you can do that. Now you can have direct access. And if, my gosh, had I just had the opportunity to speak to anybody, I just didn't know anything about the industry. I didn't have a cousin or an uncle or nothing. So I came to Los Angeles like, I don't know, I got to figure this out. So it does seem like, oh, could I save somebody a few years by answering a few questions? Maybe. So I would like to do that so that their journey, the whole point is it should get easier, right? So that their journey can maybe be a little bit easier and a little bit kinder. So I just don't think that knowledge should be at a premium. Like you shouldn't have to pay for that. That should be something that we give out freely, which is why I love libraries so much.
So let's talk about your journey a little bit. So you come out to Los Angeles, you don't know anybody. You started out, you thought you were going to be an actor, correct?
I did. I thought I was going to be an actor. I knew I wanted to be a storyteller. I just didn't know. By the way, when I was a kid and I would watch TV shows, I thought the actors were making up their lines. I didn't know that writers, until you start to look at the credits and you're like, oh, written by, oh, produced by, what is that? Mm-hmm. So yeah, I just thought I want to be a storyteller. I'll be an actor.
Mm-hmm. And so talk us through your, your journey. You're acting. You're not getting the roles you want. You're not even seeing the roles you want.
Impossible to get an agent. Impossible because I was not a stick figure. I had, boobs and a butt. Nobody knew what to do with that. They were like, but you're not spelling enough. I would get that a lot because it was 90210 was the big show, and it's like you're not spelling enough, and I was like, thank you. I don't
take it as a compliment.
That's okay with me. I don't want to be like a carbon copy. Those are beautiful women, no problem. But That's not what women I knew looked like. So I was like, shouldn't we all be represented on TV? Oh, no, not in the 90s? Interesting. So yeah, they just didn't really know what to do with me. I was this sort of, Janine Garofalo type best friend, Latina. There was no space for that. Like even, in the 90s, it was the quirky white girl that was the best friend. We didn't even get the token parts in the 90s. So they just didn't really know what to do with me. So when I went out for auditions, it would be the only roles that were for Latinos were gangbanger's girlfriend and gangbanger's sister. And this is only 15 years ago. It's not that long ago.
Yeah.
So, I do tan like a dream because I'm Cuban, but I'm a vampire woman because I sit at a computer all day. So, I would go try to get a little sun on my face. So I got a little caramel going on and I'd go in there and be like, Julie, put the gun down. Orale. It's like ridiculous. And I would leave there feeling very just depressed, really. Like why is this what's available to us? And really, I love my community. I feel so fortunate to have grown up in a beautiful family, in a Latino family. There's so many traditions and so many pieces of that never get seen on TV that it just seems like a disservice, So for me, it was really like, I just want to present what I know to be true, which is not anything I'm seeing currently on television. So I'm an impatient person. So I was waiting for a minute and then I was like, all right, well, if no one's going to do it, I guess I'll just have to do it. That's kind of how it went down. So I started putting up my own plays in Hollywood and casting them and producing them and directing them. And my husband's a cartoonist, so he would like make the posters for us. And I would go to my favorite charities and give them free tickets to opening night so that we had like a full opening night. I found out LA Weekly and Backstage West, if you are a 6-week run, they will review your show. So I would call theaters. I mostly did my stuff at Hudson Avenue Theater. So Hudson Avenue, I'm like, what night are you dark? And they're like, what, Tuesdays? Great. Can I have Tuesdays for the next 6 weeks? And it would be like $250 to rent because there's a set in there. There was like a hospital set or a whatever. And I would just use the front part of the stage and light it and put up my little one acts and my little monologue shows. And that's how I got my agent, my manager, everything happened because of those shows for me. That's really what took fire, like what caught fire, which is always the thing I'm telling young people trying to break it. Like if you're trying to break in, you have to do a thing that makes you catch fire so that people are like, oh, what's that? What's that? What's that? And that's what that show, putting up those shows, did for me at that time. This is before YouTube and you could just shoot a movie and put it out there or TikTok, or this was before that. So that's what I knew how to do. I could do it in an inexpensive way. It was a great way to teach me how to be a showrunner because I was producing, direct, I was doing everything, right? So it was like accidentally the best training ground for the job.
So then you caught fire, as you put it, and that leads you to work in television, to staff writing and things like that. What was the transition like, and what were the practical steps that you took after that?
First, I was lucky enough. My first big Hollywood job was working for Cameron Crowe. I was his second assistant.
Oh.
Yeah. And that was an incredible job that I got through an alumni connection. Chris Hanada, who was working for Cruz Wagner at the time, said, hey, we're looking for writers. There's a director that just needs somebody to basically sign for packages and be, like answer the phone, be a receptionist part-time. They want a writer because it's a lot of downtime. So if you're at the computer, you can be writing. They were fine with that. And I was like, that's the dream.
Oh, that's pretty great.
So yeah, it ended up being Cameron, and I worked for him for, I think, almost 2 years. Lovely, supportive, wonderful. And then I left working for him to get my first job in a writer's room as a writer's assistant on the Ortegas, which was 7 episodes and then got canceled, never aired on NBC. And then from there, I got my first job on Quintuplets, working for Mark Reisman, who was very kind to me and gave me that huge break. And on that show, I met Carter and Craig, who did How I Met Your Mother. It just from there took off.
For you, what do you, as someone who is rising through the ranks, what were some of the skills that you found useful to you, helping you climb that ladder? Obviously you're learning a lot as you go, but, what were things or tools that you had that you think made, set you apart from others and made you successful in that journey?
Well, I think that look, there were varying levels of success. I mean, looking back, there are some jobs that I don't think I did great, right? It's just, it's very scary being in a writer's room, or at least it was for me. It was really scary. I was with all these guys, and a lot of them had gone to fancy schools that I didn't go to. And I was the diversity hire in some of those rooms. So they're like, oh, you're just here because you're the diversity. Not everybody would be that way. There were a lot of, had so much kindness along the way that you don't forget the people that were super kind to you, but there were some that were not, right? And I'm not a shrinking violet. So I really feel for writers when they're starting out, because you just want to do a good job and stay there, right? Like once you get it, all of the effort is about getting the agent and getting in the room. Nobody really talks about what happens when you get in the room. How do you stay in the room? And the way to stay in the room is to make yourself of value. But I didn't really know that for a while. I was just scared. I was like, oh my God, I'm here. So maybe I'll just be quiet and they won't notice. I mean, like I was effective in different ways on different shows. But certainly as I started to really sit in, I am here to do this job. I'm here at the service of this showrunner. They need to get a show made. How can I be helpful in getting that show made? The moment that cracked in my mind, I think I became a better writer on staff. And there's so many things I learned as being a showrunner that after being a showrunner, I got to go work on United We Fall under Goldie Sharp. And that was great because that was the first time I had been on staff after having been a showrunner. And I think that's the best I'd ever been on a staff because I knew exactly what he needed, right? I knew what he needed to make the show that he wanted to make. It wasn't my show. I took nothing personally. I would have ideas. He hated it. It didn't matter. I have another idea. Here you go. And I think early on, you're so terrified and you take everything so personally that it can be debilitating and anxiety inducing. And I already have anxiety. So I think that it took me a minute. And I think people just need to be kind to themselves on the path and try to learn as much as you can learn to get better at the job. But ultimately, if you are on a staff, you are there at the service of the showrunner. You are there to help them make the show they want to make. So how can you help them? What idea can you give them? What story can you so that we can all go home? What thing are you going to do that's going to crack it? So I think once that became crystal clear, everything became much, much easier for me.
And when did you make the jump from, staff to being showrunner to creating your own stuff? What was the first show there? Was it One Day at a Time?
Yeah. One Day at a Time. First time I was a showrunner. Yeah. And it really came at a unique time for me because I also went through a phase where I just wanted to try out, I jumped into sitcom and my writing is not super jokey. I'm funny, but I'm not jokey. I'm not like super joke driven. Mm-hmm. So it was like, well, gosh, maybe I should have been in dramedy or maybe I should have. So there was a point in my career where I would sit down with my reps and be like, maybe I should try a 1 hour dramedy or maybe I should try a procedural to see if I like that. So I was really fortunate in my career because not a lot of writers get to do this. A lot of times you're in your lane and that's just your lane. So I did get to go work on a single camera comedy and mixology. I did get to go work on a 1 hour soap with Devious Maids. I did get to go work on a procedural with iZombie. So it was so cool to be able to do all of those things. And at the end of it, I sat down and I was like, all right, I'm not good at procedural. I loved Rob and Diane, but I could not write iZombie. I could not write it. And that's another thing that writers, you can't write everything and that's okay. There are things that you can consume and love watching that are not your cup of tea, that are not what your superpower is. And that's okay. So I was really like, okay, I think what I want to do is I would like to make a multicam that's grounded, that's not super joke driven, like the stuff I grew up on in the 80s. I haven't really seen that kind of family comedy in a while. That's like, sometimes you would cry during Family Ties, it would have that beautiful mix. And kind of when I put that out, when I said those words out loud to my agents, it's like some magic happened. And I got the phone call to meet with Norman. And it was like, insane. Okay. I mean, and I've told the story before, but I really went to that meeting because I wanted to meet Norman Lear. I had no intention, right? I just wanted to sit with him. He was so disarming, so legitimately curious, just such a beacon of hope that I needed in that moment. And so many Latinos had told me, hey, listen, if you're going to tell the story of your family, you can only do it once. So be precious about when you get to do it. Mm-hmm. Because they're going to get in there and they're going to mess with it and it's going to hurt your heart because you're going to feel like your family is being torn apart in front of you. With Norman, I felt like, oh, my family's safe with you. My family's safe with you. So he gave me the courage, I think, to really go there with my own personal experiences of my family. And then Mike Royce was already attached to the show. And that was also a moment of concern because I had also heard like, oh, these white guys, they're going to pair you because you're going to be like the divert. Oh, it's legit because there's a Latina here, but really they have no interest in anything you have to say. Opposite was true with Mike. Mike sat down with me the first day we met and said, you're my partner. We're going to do this together. I'm going to teach you how to be a showrunner and you're going to have this job for the rest of your life. And then everything that both Mike and Norman did from that point on was lifting me up and staying true to the promises they made to me initially. And that's really where I feel like I gained my strength and my power.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I love hearing that story because it's so not the story that that I'm used to
Yeah,
hearing.
well, I mean, it speaks to the positive. It speaks to what it looks like when there's honest white allyship, right? Like, I think that both of those men are titans in their own way, and were like, I want to be giving back, and I want to be lifting somebody else up, and then they did.
Mhm.
And it worked.
All right. Couple last things before we wrap up. You mentioned, sitting down with your representation and, kind of figuring out who you were, what kind of path you wanted to go on. So many writers, I think they assume like, once I get an agent, once I get a manager, that's it, I'm done. And they're going to do everything. They're going to get me all the jobs. Can you bring us some reality? What is your relationship like with your representatives, and what are some things that you would advise against in terms of people's relationships with their representation?
So you are the product and your agents are the salesman. So if you're not giving your agents product to sell, they cannot do anything. Like the amount, I will tell you, I keep an Excel spreadsheet of writers that I like. And because I read a lot. And I'll read people and go, that's not right for this show, but maybe for something else. And I'll put a little pin in them. And so with Love, my new show for Amazon Prime Video, I went to that list and I was like, let me check in on some of these writers. And I reached out to the agents and said, what's their sample now? And they sent me the same sample they sent me 3 years ago for One Day at a Time. Is there a new piece? No, that's their sample. Nope. No, there's no new sales tool. I gave my agents something new to sell every 6 months. So we are in partnership. Now, they also work for you. I think a lot of people are very scared of their agents. I'm not scared of my agents. My agents are my partners, but I need to make them money and they need to do their job so that they can make money. So I try to sit with them and get real honest assessments. Hey, if people didn't respond to that sample, why did they not respond? Let's break it down. Oh, okay. It needs to be punched up or funnier. And I would constantly be writing new samples so that they had new things to pick up the phone and say, we know that the sexy romp show wasn't exactly up your alley, but she has a family show now. Would you guys like to read that? Right? Like giving them constant tools to sell you and having honest and direct conversations with them, and also not being afraid to hear the hard conversations, which are what did people not like and what can you work on? Because if you get on a staff and you are in a room, which is for me was a terrifying place for a very long time. And then you get a script, you get a week to go write that script. If that script's not good when you turn it in, you're not going to be asked back. Right. So it's like, how do you stay in the chair? You get that muscle working when you're not there yet. So that by the time you get there, you're ready. You're ready to crush it so that you stay there.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. So you mentioned With Love. That's the new project for Amazon. What can you say about it right now?
Oh, I'm just so proud of it. I'm so grateful to Amazon. This is the fastest they've ever gone into production on anything. I pitched it in the middle of January and we had a room going in February and we were in production in June. And now, I don't know, we don't have an official release date yet, but I hope that it's, around the holidays. That would be my hope. But it follows the Diaz siblings, Jorge and Lily, as they're searching for love. The show every episode is a holiday. So we follow them over the course of a year. And each day is one day.
That's a lot of fun.
Yeah. So we get to see where they are and them falling in love and things working out and things not working out. And it's multi-generational, which is exciting too. We have their grandparents, their parents, and then they are them and their peer group. It's just a lot of, LGBTQ stories. We have a trans storyline with Isis King and Todd Grinnell, a really lovely storyline between two gay men. And then we have two Latinos, Afro-Latino, Rome Flynn, and he's our big romantic lead. And then Emerald Tobia is the Latina lead, and she's unbelievable. So they're like an incredible cast. It's very exciting.
You're part of the cast as well, right?
I am. I play a drunken Tia Gladys, who's just a disaster and comes in and says funny things. So it's really fun. Really fun.
You gave yourself the best role, the scene-stealing role.
Yeah, exactly. I just give myself I say funny, inappropriate things, and I leave. It's the best. Dream come true.
Well, last question before we wrap up. You've already given a lot of really great information. I think that people will find it helpful. But up till this point in your career, over the course of everything you've done, is there something or some things you've learned that you really wish you knew when you were first starting out that you would tell yourself back then? Yeah,
I think the biggest kind of no-no when you enter a room is that this is like the tell of the staff writer is saying like, I don't like that without offering a solution. Right? Like it's easy to say I don't like something. That's easy to do. What's hard is providing a solution. if you are thinking, I'm not loving that, how do you fix that problem and present a solution? So, well, instead of that, what if we do this? And that might not be the answer, but that answer might lead other people to have the answer. So sometimes pitching the what about this instead of just taking a dump on everything is a better way of going about things and helping the showrunner get to what they want.
I think that's probably good advice in general. Don't just take a dump on things. Try to look for a solution.
Yeah, try to look for a solution. It's hard to make stuff. It's hard. It's hard to tell stories. It's hard to make stuff. So, kindness is key.
Well, Gloria, thank you for taking the time to chat with me today. And I can't wait to see you with Love, hopefully later this year.
Yeah, me too. I can't wait to hear what you think.
Thanks again to Gloria Calderon-Kellett for coming on the show. And as always, thanks to you, our listeners. If you liked this episode, leave us a review. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the show on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. For news about new episodes and more, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at Final Draft Inc., and on Instagram at Final Draft Screenwriting. This podcast was produced by Kayla Guess and co-produced by Emma Vranich. Editing is by Sean Bonnet. Music is by T. Kelly. Thanks again, everyone. Until next time, right on.